I mean, I'd have to be recognized. That's another thing that comes along with being a celebrity. None of those things are happening, I don't think. So
if I go to your hometown, I'm not gonna. If I asked people who Armen Hammer was, they wouldn't know.
No, they would just point to the giant statue. They'd be like, "He's that guy, right?" There's like a 25-foot bronze statue of me, like holding my son and like catching a wall ball or something with the other hand.
Love.
Well, we are live with Armen Hammer right here on the Clydesdale Media YouTube channel. This is the Clydesdale Fitness and Friends podcast. My co-hosts Amy Radowski and Kat Shear are with me, and the aforementioned Armen Hammer as well. We wanted to catch up with Armen. He holds the record currently as the longest podcast we have ever produced.
Sweet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just by you edged out Dex Hopkins by like 3 minutes.
Oh, wow. Dex is a talker, too. I wonder what that says about me. Woof.
Well, we the last time we had you on, we kind of went through your life. Yeah. And I think we got all the way to 3rd grade before we ran out of time.
Yeah. That sounds about right. That sounds right. A lot happened. Kindergarten was crazy.
Yeah.
Well, you've been busy since we've talked.
Yeah. My wife and I had a baby. She did all the work. And now that baby is sleeping for the first time in 9 months. No, he's doing great. We just went out on a little coffee date with him this morning. He's taking his little like midday nap or late morning nap right now. It's been a crazy experience being a dad. I mean, it really has been wild. My entire life was just flipped upside down in an instant. And, there's no looking back from that. So it's been,
so how does he
really
take
cool.
his coffee?
If it were up to him, he doesn't care if it's hot or cold. And all he wants to do is slam it into things. So he would just bat it away or grab it and bam it into the ground or the coffee table or really anything. He would just want it to be the most chaotic experience possible. And he's really good at that.
Can you tell us a little bit about the birthing experience without getting into too much graphic detail or personal detail with Katie? But
yeah, sure. Of course. Yeah. We had planned, so we had a hard time getting pregnant to begin with. It took us a couple years, and we had a couple misfires there, and then finally, we got pregnant at the the tail end of 2020, and we were planning on doing a home birth. We kind of always had that in mind. Katie worked in the healthcare space. She was a nurse in the ER for a year, and then she was a nurse at a maternal fetal medicine clinic for a year. So, and that was while she was pregnant, which was like both a benefit because she got imaging all the time, but it was also a little bit of a detriment because she was sort of seeing like the worst case scenarios a lot. Like she was seeing really like heart-wrenching, like difficult scenarios. So I think it added a little bit to our stress that way. But I think both of us were sort of interested in having a process that we had more control over. So we picked this idea of doing like a home birth. And then in the middle of her pregnancy, we moved. So we moved from Austin to LA, which is where my family's at. And we figured we'd be closer to family for a little bit, early on in our son's life for a little while, try it out and see how it goes. And so we found a pair of midwives that work out here, and they had hospital privileges as well in case we needed to get into a hospital. And what ended up happening was we hit our due date. So we hit 40 weeks and nothing. And then we hit 41 weeks and nothing. And suddenly it was kind of coming up against the wire. Our midwives were very comfortable home birth, home delivery up until about 42 weeks. And we were kind of getting into that 42nd week. We had a couple appointments with an OB that they work with, and eventually just made the decision to, set a hard date. Like if she hasn't gone into labor by this date, it was like, I think we had a couple of appointments on a Friday, and then we had a couple of appointments on a Saturday. And both times the OB was like, you should probably just stay and induce right now at the hospital. And my wife and I were both like, not going to happen. Like that's the exact opposite scenario. Like that's what we're trying to avoid. Like we're trying to avoid the, railroaded into decision after decision after decision that we don't necessarily feel like we had agency in. And so we basically like put a hard stop. We said, listen, if we don't go into labor by Tuesday on our own, we're going to come in Tuesday morning for an induction. That's what ended up happening. We came in on Tuesday, we started induction, and just over 30-ish hours later, our son was born. The next day, he was born July 21st. So
he was very comfortable in there.
I mean, it was the
happy.
best we could make it. Yeah, it was the best we could make it. I think her body was ready. It didn't take a lot to sort of start the process of labor. But we, happily it was healthy. It was not, I'm not going to say it was pain-free because it definitely was not pain-free. But it was the best that we could do in the circumstances, and both she and our son came out of it healthy and happy. So.
And that's a good message for later on with parenting, that it's nice to have plans. Like it's a great idea to have plans, but to be flexible with those plans is really important.
Yeah. I mean, even before he was born, he was already starting to call the shots. And we couldn't see it at the time. We couldn't see that it was really a precursor of what was to come, but he's very, very headstrong, and it's clear that he was already pulling out all of his tricks real early on. So,
did you guys find out the gender beforehand?
We did not. No. So we did it as a surprise. We kept it a surprise. In fact, we kept it a surprise, and we discussed names. But I was so convinced we were going to have a little girl. Like I was so convinced. I was like, this is definitely going to be a little girl. 100% we're having a little girl. We didn't even talk about boy names. So he's born. And I got to call it, right? He comes out, our midwife catches him, and then she like holds him up, and I was like, it's a boy. Like I don't have a name for this guy. Like I don't know what to say. I was so surprised. But we ended up coming to figure out a name for him that's more it's a traditional Armenian name, but it basically, we shorten it down to Lev, so Lev. So yeah, our little Lev is just running around and having a great time these days.
So what does a day in the life of you guys now look like?
These past we moved to LA almost exactly a year ago, about a year and a week ago. So it's been a really whirlwind year. I mean, if there was any type of change that could happen in a person's life, like we've basically gone through that. Professionally, personally, where we live, all how we spend our time, all of that just got completely flipped around. And so our time spent over the past 9-10 months, ever since our son was born, has actually been almost entirely with both of us, at home with him and hanging out. And it's been amazing. I mean, it has literally been the best possible way that we could have done this. We both miss Austin a ton. We miss the network that we had out there. We miss the friends and family that we had out there. And California has a lot of its own challenges to figure out and overcome. Where we live, luckily, is kind of insulated from a lot of that. It has a very small town feel. It's very Pleasantville, the neighborhood that we live in, which is great. And it's just been a really cool opportunity. I mean, we'll wake up in the morning, for example, like today, I teach a couple jiu-jitsu classes during the week as just an opportunity for me to get some of my training in, and I'm awake really early in the morning anyway, so I teach early morning jiu-jitsu classes a couple times a week. So I'll wake up around 5-ish. At that point, if Lev hasn't made his way into our bed at some point in the middle of the night, I'll probably just grab him and bring him over to Kate. Then I'll go coach in the morning. I'll be back by 7:30. We'll hang out with Lev. Maybe Katie has a yoga class or something, and she'll go do that so we trade off in the mornings. And then today we went and had a little coffee date. Went to the little hipster coffee shop down the street. They were a lot more polite now this time than they were the last time we went. Last time we went to this little hipster coffee shop. The lady working the front, the cash register, was just not really pleasant. I was like, is this the vibe at this spot? Like, you guys have really good pastries and you have breakfast tacos. Like, I'm gonna come back. Like, maybe you know that I'm definitely coming back, and you don't have to be really that pleasant. But they're actually very, very pleasant today. And so we went, had some coffee, had some breakfast, came back. He's taken a nap. We played around with him for a little bit. He's like in that age right now where he's very, very curious, and he's very, very confident that he knows exactly what he wants, even though he doesn't always know exactly what he wants. So he like crawls around and he plays around with a bunch of stuff. He's like just starting to learn how to stand on his own. So he's getting close to kind of taking his first steps. And so we're really kind of trying to create an environment in the living room where he like go from thing to thing. So he's very active around the house. He just loves to play around with the dogs and
on furniture.
Oh yeah. I mean, if there's an open door, he'll close it. If there's a closed door, he'll open it. He has his own little, in our kitchen, you know, we realized we have to like sort of child-proof the cabinets. And my solution to that was just to get like an industrial bag of rubber bands and just rubber band all the handles closed. So, you know, he has like one cabinet that's around that's on the floor level that is his stuff. It's like his little plates and his little spoons and stuff. So he just like rips it open and just starts flinging things behind him and like slamming them into the ground. And yeah, we have a stool that he loves to like grab and flip over. He doesn't have teeth yet, but then he'll grab like the leg of the stool and he'll just like nosh it so hard with his gums that he leaves gum imprints. I mean, like, this kid is so intense. He just has like this like intensity to his existence. It's amazing. It's so much fun. But yeah, our regular day is very much split around, you know, Katie loves to do stuff around the house, like gardening stuff. And, you know, we'll essentially take turns with him running our own errands or being with him. We like to just tag team and double team actually as much as we can. So if we can spend time with them together, we spend as much time with them as we can. We just drag them along to everything that we do. I mean, we travel with them. You know, we went up to visit Katie's family. Her family's in Washington State for the first, and I mean, by the time he was like 6 months, we had been on 5 or 6 flights with him. I mean, we flew with him a lot. We took him to Washington. We took him to Austin. We took him, I think we even took him to Vegas. We took him all over the place. I mean, he just comes with us. I mean, what else is he going to do? He has no option. So
yeah, you're kind of in charge of him.
Yeah, it's not like he can really say no. And he's actually been a really pleasant traveler. So I think we might have either lucked out, and go to knock on my desk on that one, but we either lucked out or we just doing one thing right. So I'll take either one of those.
So how does he get along with the dogs? And more importantly, how do the dogs get along with him?
He loves the dogs. He loves the dogs. I mean, so we have 3. We have Sunny, we have Loki, and we have Bowie. And Sunny is getting up in the years now. I mean, he's turning 11 next month. And, you know, Sunny will lay on the couch and Lev will spot him from across the house. I mean, like literally across the house. And he will just beeline for Sunny. And Sunny's just like, whatever, man. Like, you're going to come over here, come over here. So he'll be on the couch, and then he'll, you know, Lev will like crawl, get up there, stand up on the couch, and then he'll like grab Sunny's paw and just like put his mouth on it. Or he'll grab Sunny's face and like put his nose in his mouth. So we're trying to like maybe stop that behavior the best, because with our dogs it's fine. Like, you know, we're there, we're always around, we're not going to let him do that on his own. But like, maybe if he gets used to doing that, he's going to try that with other dogs, and we can't guarantee that other dogs are cool with it. So we're trying to kind of get him in a better habit with, you know, personal space with dogs. We're trying to teach him like gentle, don't grab their face, don't grab their nose, that sort of thing. But he loves Sunny. You know, he always makes a beeline for Sunny. Loki is very wary of him. She tolerates his presence. So like, he'll go over and try and do the same thing to her, and she'll spot him and she'll move. She'll be like, nope, I'm done. Like, she'll like run away. She'll go to the other side of the house. She's like, I'll go lay down somewhere else. Like, I'm not playing with you right now. And Bowie is basically just, he's like a rug. I mean, he'll just lay on his back until Lev comes over and just plays the drums on his chest. It's really, really cool. Yeah, the dogs are great with him.
So what has been the favorite moment as a father?
Wow. My absolute favorite thing I've ever done in my entire life, I can't think of a single thing that has brought me more joy than making that baby laugh. Like just making him laugh is really easy because there's like a little spot that he like is ticklish on his ribs. Easiest thing on the face of the planet. But it's like literally the best, most joyful, happiest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And yeah, I mean, that right there is it. The first couple months, you know, I wasn't very useful. I was essentially like a participant as opposed to a dad. Like I was basically like, hey, I'm a supporting actor in this relationship between my wife and my baby.
Yeah.
And I'm totally okay with that. I knew going into it that I was going to just be playing a supporting role. And I'm very, very happy that I did that. And I'm very, very lucky that I get to be home and be with him, you know, a lot more than a lot of other people might in you know, being new dads. And so it's been really, really nice to be able to do that. And, you know, I think after that first couple months, once he first started recognizing me and like not being upset with me, because I was just the guy who would like change his diaper. So he went from being like warm and comfortable to being like naked and cold. And like, I'm the face that's like over him as he's doing that. Once he started recognizing me and being like, oh, hey, there's that guy. That guy's pretty cool. He really made that time a lot easier to deal with and a lot more fun. But it's just like every single day he gets cuter and he gets more exciting and more interesting and more engaging. And it's pretty mind blowing. It's pretty mind blowing.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing for me is people describe what parental love is going to be, and you don't ever get it. Like you don't get it until it happens. Then the moment it happens, you're like, now I know what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. I mean, you know, there's a sense of like loss. There's a sense of mourning of like the life that I had before he was born, because it's gone. Like I'll never, ever be able to live my life the way I did before he was born. You know, I think Katie sent me a meme this morning of like this guy pouring himself like just like a huge cup of coffee. And then the caption is something like me realizing that, you know, my choices mean that I can never sleep in again. And in the background is like his kids having breakfast and they're labeled my choices. So it's like, yeah, so it's like the consequences of us having a child means that like we're losing essentially a lot of our autonomy as like individuals and as a couple. And, you know, that trade-off was definitely challenging. I think it's been really challenging to sort of figure that out. But the payoff for that is like this unending fountain of love and engagement. And it's just something that has gotten deeper and more powerful every single day. I honestly don't know what it's going to be like, you know, years from now. Like I can't even think about the day that like he actually has an opinion and then shares it with me with words. Like that blows my mind that at some point he's going to be like, not this, Dad, this. I'm gonna be like, who taught you that? Who taught you to want this flavor as opposed to that flavor? Like that makes no sense. That's crazy. But he's like his own little person who's like half of us. It's really weird.
Yeah. And it'll be here before you know it too. I know that it used to drive me crazy when people always say like, oh, time goes by so fast. I'm thinking, yeah, whatever. And you know, 19, I got a 19 and a 16 and I have no idea what happened. Like, how did I get here?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how to, you know, if I could slow it down, I would. And yeah. I don't know how to do that. I think there's like a sense of like presence that I've been trying to work on to like be there. That's really challenging, but it's, you know, I think that's one way of doing it, but I'm all ears. I mean, like I will happily listen to any and all takes or advice, because the worst case scenario, I'm like, not for me. And then I don't worry about it. Right. but like, I'm absolutely all ears to any sort of, you know, parenting takes or advice, because like, what do I know? It's my first kid. I have nieces and nephews, but it's very different when someone hands him to you and is like, well, keep him alive. And it's like, what? I don't know what you mean. Like, you know?
Yeah, you're speaking my language. This is what I do for a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you hit me up when you want to talk kid stuff.
Okay, great. That's I mean, I'm absolutely, like I said, I'm all ears. I love the learning process. There's been a lot of like, you know, I think we did this right. And there's been a lot of like, maybe we shouldn't have done it this way. And you know, I'm never one to be like, oh my God, I regret that so much. Like, I can't believe I did that. I very much feel confident that, like, you know, even looking back at some of the things I definitely would do differently, kid related or not, like whatever part of my life it is, I know that in the moment I was making the right decision. Like, I know that based off of what I knew at that point, I was making the right decision. I was making the right call, the best call that I could. And sometimes that's trade-offs that I didn't realize what the actual trade-off was going to be. And I didn't realize what the actual price I was going to pay was. And, you know, you learn from those things. So I'm not really one to have like big regrets. And so I think that's been really good as well. Cause like, you know, if he like falls and, you know, I could have done something, or I missed it, or like he hurts himself, or like, you know, those things aren't gonna, I'm not really gonna lose a lot of sleep over it. I'm just gonna be like, all right, dude, you got to do better next time. Like, you're trying your best, you're exhausted, but you got to do better next time. Like, try your best more. Try more of your best. Like 105% of your best, if possible.
Are you documenting a lot?
Yeah, we, you know, I've been trying to figure out the best way of doing this. I have like a little journal that's been a little bit difficult to keep up with. We obviously take just an obnoxious amount of photos and videos of this child. And so we have a ton of content and media on him. We have plenty of photos, plenty of videos. I've been trying to figure out the best way of sort of like cataloging it and putting it together. Right now it's all just like interspersed in like iPhoto. So we have to figure that out.
Yeah, but it's hard.
Again,
we have like a hard drive of, you know, the kids' photos from whenever, you know, every time we get a new phone or something like that. And it kills me that I don't go back and look at it enough, you know, or remember it enough. One thing we did, we do calendars every year, just a 12-month calendar. You can do it on like Apple or whatever. And it just pick every month, pick like our favorite photo. And that's been really cool. Like, we give it to family members. We haven't done it in years, but like when the kids were little, up until probably high school, we did that. And that was a lot of fun. A nice way to just kind of go back and look at sort of like your highlight reel from the year before.
I like that. That's a really good idea. We've been trying to figure out, I mean, we essentially, once we had our son and the second we had like the first, you know, like my dad's birthday is the day after or 2 days after my son's birthday. It's like right there. The first Christmas, like, you know, we're like, oh, for the rest of our parents' lives, they're just getting photos of this baby for every occasion. Yep. And I was like, what else can we do that for? Like, where else can we do? Can we make like calendars? A great idea. Like, I think
every Christmas, everybody gets a calendar every Christmas.
Yeah.
Make a handprint with
the handprint thing. Yep. That's a good one too.
Eat that shit up.
Yeah, that's a good one too. You know, go ahead.
I was gonna say, my mom started a tradition too. I don't know. Do you celebrate Christmas?
We do.
Okay. So she makes an ornament once a year out of something that the kids wore, like an important piece of clothing. So like the outfit they wore home from the hospital was their 1-year ornament. And it's literally just like a circle with like some filler in it, you know, sewn with like a little ribbon. Very simple. She's a great sewer, but like you don't have to be super talented. But she would do that. And then like the next year, my son like fell down the stairs and like was in the hospital and had like a yellow shirt on that like got all bloody, and we took like a clean part of the shirt and like we made an ornament out of the shirt because that was like a huge deal that year. Right? His second year, like we'll never forget when he fell down the steps. And then we just get into like other things like cute little outfits or special little, you know, superhero costumes, you know, things. And she does that.
I dig that.
A cool little tradition too. And then we have a tree that's just specifically this little like Charlie Brown tree, and it's the kids' ornament tree.
Now, I think a very topical question is, what would what would one get a first Mother's Day mother? What would one get a mother for her first Mother's Day? Because I've already given Katie what I know that she wants, which is she's getting a night away from me.
That's exactly what I would say. A hotel room where she can go and sleep.
I got her a hotel room and a massage, like
100%.
Two spa days and a night in between at a hotel down the street in Pasadena.
Absolutely,
that works.
So it's like I know that that's what she wants for sure, but like maybe there should be something else. Like maybe I should put something else in there. I don't know. I gotta think about it. Maybe like handprints or something. The kids' handprints.
I would have died for that right there.
You can't go wrong with handprints. You can't go wrong with any little, finger painting thing that you can have him do on his own. That kind of stuff is cute. I have a folder somewhere in the attic with that kid's stuff, but
I'll do that. I think that's probably what my move's gonna be.
Did you give her a push present?
Yes, I did. I got her a ring that says Magic Mama. It's like it's the word Magic Mama like wrapped around into a ring that she still wears. She wears it all the time. I didn't know push presents were a thing. She was very, very kind to let me know that those are a thing. And she was also kind enough to tell me exactly what she wanted. So
Perfect.
I just thought of one other good gift.
Yeah.
His birthstone and something.
His birthstone. What's July? I hope it's not diamond.
Ruby. It's a ruby.
Ruby? Okay, ruby I could do. I could do. I'll figure that out.
Like a necklace or bracelet, something like that. Moms like that kind of stuff too.
You could even probably do another little, like a ring with just a tiny little ruby in it and his name or something like that. Like a stackable ring.
That's pretty
cute. A bunch of those.
Those are great ideas. Thank you so much for that. Really going to make me look like a superhero if I can pull it off. Like husband of the year right now.
I forgot. You get to a point, Armen, where you forget it's even. I didn't even realize it was Mother's Day.
I just learned it today.
I'm not going to see. I probably won't see either of my kids on Mother's Day. So, and then it becomes the other thing is you have to remember your mom, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the part for me that my mom always gets the shaft since I've had kids on Mother's Day. Yeah. Same thing with Father's Day. So it ends up being a weird holiday.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's. We're lucky enough that like I see my mom and dad regularly. Her family lives, like I said, in Washington State. We're actually going up there this weekend to be with her mom over Mother's Day because her sister is also a mom. So it's like it's really nice to be able to do that, I think. And my mom's birthday is next week, so we always do Mother's Day and her birthday around the same time. And so I'll be back in time to celebrate Mom's birthday and hopefully, show her that I am actually a good son that loves and appreciates her.
Right.
Well, you notice I took a back seat to this whole conversation and just let the two of them go. I've been married 25 years this May, and I still don't have it down. So,
I mean, congratulations on making it to 25 years. That's a pretty big one. I mean, making it that far means you've done something right.
Yeah. I've just learned to just give in.
Yeah.
Just give in.
Fair enough.
10 years I fought back and then it just didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
I made a comment to my husband the other day. He was saying something about he's the CFO of this affiliate. It's the chief facilities officer. The handyman. If something breaks or something goes wrong, he's got all the tools and he fixes. And he was saying we're putting a threshold in the garage, one of the back garage doors, and he said, what do you think about this? You think about that? And I said, I don't know. You're the boss. And he's like, really? Am I the boss?
Yeah.
I was like, well, okay, you're right. Maybe not.
It's fun to pretend sometimes though, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Armen, we know that you had this baby, and we also know as CrossFit nerds that you've taken a step back from the CrossFit space.
Yeah.
So was that a conscious decision, or was it a lack of time, or did you go in a different direction?
It was a little bit all of the above ish. Lev was born the week of the games, or maybe the week before the games. I mean, it was within a week of the games last year. So with a 1 week old, I covered the games the best I could, from the house. I set up like, live watch alongs and stuff. I scheduled it to make sure, Kate was good with me, disappearing for a couple hours at a time. I did pick and choose my battles to see which events I was going to cover and which ones I wasn't. And it's now I'm thinking back on it, it's quite a blur, like I really don't remember that first like month or 6 weeks or so of Lev's life, because there's so very little sleep. But yeah, I was burnt out on covering CrossFit a lot by the time that he was born. It was 2019 was a big year. I traveled a lot. I was at a lot of the different events. I traveled to a lot of different sanctional events. I was at the games. It was a lot. 2019 was a lot of work. And then obviously the 10 years leading up to that I was still covering CrossFit, added up a little bit. By the time, all the COVID shutdowns happened, by the time 2020 happened, and then it was, the whole Greg Glassman thing. And then it was, CrossFit gets sold. And what does that mean for CrossFit? What does it mean for the future? I just felt like at a certain point I was kind of repeating myself. I felt like I was just saying similar things over and over again. And the people who listened either agreed or disagreed and kind of brought up good points or in both directions. And the people who heard what they wanted to hear generally tended to just assume that I was saying something that I definitely wasn't, which is just common for the internet in general. And I felt like I kind of got my point across in a lot of ways. And by the time we sort of did this insane, like, third trimester cross country move, and then like a couple months later had a baby, by the time that happened, I was just really worn thin by the CrossFit, not like the community, because that was 100% the best part of everything that this thing has to offer. But I was just worn thin by the organization. Like, CrossFit as an organization wore me out to the point where I just could not see myself, like, especially once Lev was born and I kind of felt this really monumental shift in my priorities. The time that I was spending covering CrossFit as an organization felt poisonous. It just did not feel right. So for about a month or two after he was born, I still had a couple podcasts and stuff that I had interviews like scheduled. So I did that. And then I took a little bit of time, and maybe a couple months later, I started doing these podcasts called Father More, where I was interviewing other dads. And I loved doing that. I mean, that was awesome. I got a chance to talk to, I think I did a dozen episodes. I got a chance to talk to dads in a ton of different environments, with a lot of different experiences, adopted fathers, kids, dads with like newborns, like me, Bellner, who has a son who's just a month or two older than my son, men with like grown adult children who talked about, the things that they would do differently or the things that they would remember or focus on with their kids growing up. All of that was really great to me. And my perspective on that is that it was a great concept and it was a wonderful podcast. And if I could do it, I would continue doing it, but I didn't structure it right. And I just bit off way more than I could chew. So by the time, Lev was like 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, that was about when I was doing all those interviews. I mean, I would say I was spending an inordinate amount of time focusing on that podcast. I was trying to do too much of it myself. And I didn't have a good structure in place for it to be, easily repeatable. And by the time the holiday season rolled around and it was more challenging to schedule interviews, and it was more challenging to find the time to do all the editing and all the posting, I was like, I can't. Like, I think that was probably the healthiest decision that I've made in terms of like being a content creator. It was like, I actually saw the red line coming and I was like, this is going to become a problem. I need to slow this down right now. So I think one day I would love to come back and continue doing those interviews with those dads. and just sort of break out of the CrossFit space and interview other dads, and learn from them, because it's like, what do I know? I have a 9-month-old. Like, I know some stuff, but like, I don't know a lot. And I think learning from talking to people is something that I prefer to do. I prefer to have conversations like that and learn about other people's experiences. And so, maybe that's something that I could come back to, but I really don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be covering CrossFit really again. I don't know the best way to describe it, but like, something flipped. I just felt so burnt out from CrossFit as an organization. I felt so, like, at a certain point when I'm getting pushed out by the main, players in the space, like in the actual, like, oh, we run the sport, we run the business, like all those people. The event organizers were always really pleasant and nice to deal with. The sponsors and the brands were the best people on the planet. Some of my best friends I've met through the work that I was doing. The community was always amazing to deal with and to be a part of and to have these conversations with. But like, CrossFit as an organization was so challenging, and it like wore me so thin, and it wore me down so quickly. Like, I didn't even come back and do a podcast after Dave Castro left CrossFit. That doesn't tell you how tired of CrossFit.
Yeah.
I could not speak about it anymore, to the point where and even like up until that point, I would have phone calls. I still have like weekly phone calls with people in the space, because obviously there's people have questions. They want to know something that happened 10 years ago or whatever. It's like, who else are they going to talk to? Like, I'm of course still around to help and still around to be involved. And I want to continue helping my friends out. But like, the week before Dave was fired, I was on a call and someone asked me the same question, which was like, do you think you'll come back and do you think you'll tell any stories in the space again? And I was like, there's one story that I would ever want to tell, and it should have happened in 2018, and it should have happened in 2019, and it should have happened in 2020, and it should have happened in 2021, and it hasn't happened yet. And that's Dave Castro getting out of CrossFit. And the next week he was fired. And I was like, turns out I still don't want to tell that story. Like, it turns out that I've already talked about that ad nauseum, that there's no, like, I don't know what else to add. And I've kind of tried to keep up with what is happening with the people that I am closest with. And through them, I've kept up with what's happening in CrossFit as an organization. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say exactly where they're going or what they're trying to do. I mean, from a media perspective, they feel and look just as lost as they've ever been. From an organizational perspective, they look really like, internally, each of the different departments seem to be like fighting each other in a weird way. Like, the games are still like really, really secretive, even internally. And, I think they're doing a much better job actually building an affiliate support inside of the business, which I think is fantastic. I have some friends that work on that side of the business, and it seems like they're doing some great things, actually reaching out and talking to a lot of the affiliates. I think from an education perspective, they're really sort of finally catching up to the 21st century. They're really changing and adding a lot of different things they should have added and should have changed over the past like 6 or 7 years. But it's really hard to say what the end game is going to be. I thought Eric was going to last a lot longer than 18 months. I thought he was going to last at least 3 years. And it's really, really hard to say where they're going. But I know that for me, I just can't. I don't see myself sitting down every day and talking about the same mistakes and the same decisions and the same sort of like hamster wheel that CrossFit HQ seems to be finding itself in consistently. I just wish that sometimes they did some things differently, and I just wish that sometimes they tried some things differently. It really does feel sometimes like it's Groundhog Day with HQ.
For sure. Yeah, it would seem like you mentioned it earlier that it was almost like you're talking about the same thing over and over again. And that's, I feel, for us as a media company and really invested in CrossFit and the sport, that's what it's become. We're seeing that as well, obviously, that it's just the same stuff kind of over and over again. And there's a lot of toxicity in the environment that it's unfortunate. I mean, it hasn't, affected us in the same way because we're not quite, you know, as ingrained in it as you were, certainly. And we've only been doing it for, you know, a couple of years now. But yeah, I can see it's a little like you're banging your head against the wall.
Yeah, I think the thing to remember, and I think some people sometimes don't know, or sometimes because they see only a little bit of the content at a time, or they're not like as plugged in, right? You know, I love CrossFit. I think that's like something that should be really clear. Like the fact that for a dozen years straight, I basically did nothing but talk about CrossFit, whether it was like on a blog, on a podcast, on my YouTube channel, and cover CrossFit and try and, you know, really break it down and what's happening behind the scenes and why it's important and what it means and what it could do in the future and what it could turn into. I think it's really clear that I love the thing and I want it to succeed. And a differentiation that I made for myself, and I tried to make for the people who would watch my content over the years, is that there's a really big difference between the methodology and the company. And I even remember I might have been the only person who ever did this, but I brought it up directly to Greg Glassman's face one of the last times that I interviewed him. I told him, Greg, what are you going to do when you're not running CrossFit anymore? Because the organization needs you as kind of a spearhead, but the methodology doesn't need the organization. So how do you put this together? How are you going to, you know, you can't close Pandora's box. Once you open the methodology and people saw it worked and they loved it and they started doing it in their gyms, it was game over. Like at that point, it was like a doomsday clock for the organization. They need to figure out a way to keep themselves relevant and to keep themselves in the community in a really positive way. And I think they've succeeded in a lot of ways of doing that, but I think they've also failed in a lot of ways of doing that. And for me, the methodology is still something that's really beautiful and pure and applicable. And I think that, you know, it really sparked personally a lot of change in my life and a lot of things that I never thought I'd be excited about or interested in. I love training. I love training other people. You know, that's one of the ways that I've spent my time over the past 10 months. So being home, I built essentially like what I consider to be the best gym in the city in my backyard. You know, we poured a pad. I got a gazebo from Costco. I just filled it with, you know, Rogue equipment and my old equipment from my house and my old equipment from my old affiliate. And we just like made this mishmash of all my stuff. And it's amazing. I mean, I train out there. It's one of my favorite places to train. You know, my brothers come and work out. I train some jiu-jitsu guys out of it. I train some friends out of it. Like, you know, I've essentially it's kind of strange that like I kind of turned off the part of me that's doing what's happening in CrossFit as an organization. And I went back to the thing that I love the most, which was teaching, training, learning, doing, and being literally like boots on the ground in a gym space, you know, experiencing other people learning these movements or teaching myself again a lot of the things that I might have forgotten over the years, or going through these workouts again. Like, you know, that has been how I've spent my time. And it's been amazing to kind of like shut off the part of me that was so focused on the organization and just, you know, I don't have control of that as much as I would want to do something differently or want them to do something differently. Like I can't stop them from doing it the way they want to do it. So, you know, what do I have control over? I have control over my own time and my own focus. And that's kind of, you know, it's a shift that has absolutely happened. And I feel healthier for it, to be honest with you. I feel better, you know, not being dialed in and plugged in and knowing exactly everything that CrossFit is trying to do and where they're going. Because like I said, for a long time, it really did feel like it was the same thing over and over again. I feel like you can go back to my last 14 months of content, basically from when, you know, from when the COVID shutdowns happened to when, you know, Greg's exit and departure happened, and sort of talking about the future of where CrossFit should go and the things they need to fix. You could take those videos and you just basically re-release them almost exactly as is, and we're still talking about the same problems that they have back then as we have right now, which was a lot of the same problems they had 5 or 6 years ago, and those were the same problems they had 5 or 6 years before that. And suddenly you're looking at this really weird cycle that's like, okay, maybe I need to like unplug myself from this cycle for a second and sort of allow it to do my thing, because, you know, bashing my head against the wall over and over again, hoping they do something different, isn't going to get me there.
So two quick things. One is, I think what we miss as a CrossFit community is your moral compass as kind of the spokesperson for the people wanting CrossFit to do better. And you did that for a very long time, and you fought very hard during the time. So I can see where that would wear you down.
I appreciate hearing that. That does mean a lot to me. And I mean, I think, again, it's like, I think some people take the most, like the least charitable view of what I do and what I did. And they would always say, oh, he's just an outsider. He's just a hater. He's just not invited to play in the club. And it's like, you know, nobody knows, but when CrossFit first sold and Eric came in, I had some conversations with his sort of like chief of staff, with his like inner circle of crew. And I was like, here's my CV in case you don't know. Here's the role that you don't have never had, and absolutely need to have. And here's why, from a strategic point of view, this work that you've never done needs to happen in order for CrossFit to get to where you're saying you want it to go. And I basically got crickets back. I mean, I followed up multiple times over several months. This was like late 2020. And I know, like, you know, it was all hair on fire at that point, but there's got to be some point where it's like there's downtime and they're like, oh, by the way, you know, this guy who's like one of the loudest voices in the space, who always has all these different criticisms, also is like a professional in the content creation media space, has these suggestions. Maybe we should talk to him and listen to him, or just see what he has to say behind closed doors. And those conversations never came to light. I mean, I tried to be a part of, you know, it's like, be the change you want to be, right? Or you want to see. I tried to do that. I tried to be involved in CrossFit from a professional perspective and say, hey, here's what I can bring to the table. And it just kind of fell on deaf ears. And still to this day, even with the playbook that I laid out for them, saying, here's what I think that you need to do, and here's where it needs to go, and here's how you need to structure this, it still hasn't happened. And it's kind of frustrating to see that, you know? So yeah, I appreciate hearing that. And, you know, I never wanted to like set myself up as like some sort of like moral high ground. I'm just a guy who loves to work out, you know, and I've been around the space for a long enough time that I've made a lot of relationships, and I know a lot of the history, and I kind of, you know, have a background in the business side of every aspect of this industry and other industries. So like I kind of can put these different pieces together and combine that with, like, you know, I'm pretty good at taking relatively complicated things and simplifying it into things that are a little bit more understandable. And that was kind of my road. That was my lane. I tried to do that as best I could. So yeah, it feels good to hear you say that. I appreciate that.
And I think your perspective, you have like an enlightened perspective, and your delivery is not, your content isn't gimmicky. You know, it's just, it's sort of what you see is what you get, but very much so you can tell that, you know, you care about the space and you know so much about it. So, you know, I would like to see you and Brian Friend take over.
Yeah, I love cool Brian. Brian's great.
Little duo right there.
Yeah.
Well, my follow-up to that, Armen, was, and you pretty much already answered it, is when Eric took over, did you have hope that things actually were going to change? And then when they didn't, it was just kind of that last straw.
You know, I did, and I still kind of do. I think I projected onto Eric a lot more of my own, you know, thought processes. It was kind of like a feedback loop. You know, I saw like kind of like this frame of who he was that we all first were introduced to. It's like, oh, had a really successful tech business, sold it to Oracle, understands how to run large teams, understands, you know, the importance of technology and data, has some private equity backing to him that wants to make a return on their investment, and understands that things need to be updated and changed. May not necessarily know exactly what he's getting into, because like God knows whether, you know, the organization under Greg kept great books or kept great, you know, sort of metrics So like all these things, like I kind of saw the frame of what he was, and I was like, wow, like this is, if there's anybody that's going to come in and break this down to like its core and understand where this needs to go and have a vision for it, it's this guy. And then I would hear him say things and I'd be like, that makes a lot of sense. Like that's exactly how I would do it if I were to move in this direction. And then, I would make some content and say, you know what, based off of what he's saying, it looks like he might want to do X, Y, and Z. And, in order to do that, he's going to have to set up this type of a team and set up this type of a relationship with his affiliates that they've never had before. Maybe they do payment processing. Maybe they do, back of the house membership. Maybe they offer those things as sort of a, add-on to the affiliate fee. You can still be a base affiliate, but they have upcharges that do your accounting for you, do your payroll for you. And then if they do those things, then they know what the average pay is for a coach. Then they can use that to sell more L1s, because then they know what the ROI for the L1 is going to be. Then they know price per square foot for your lease versus how much you're charging. Like all of these things became really clear to me of, okay, here's where he's going to have to take this. Like if he wants to make a return on this huge investment over the next 5 to 10 years, this is where he's going to have to take it. He's going to have to do those things. And here we are, like a couple years later, and we haven't really seen those things materialize. We've seen a couple of acquisitions that kind of move in that direction. They acqui-hired Ham Plan that's running now CAP. But CAP is a great idea, but seems kind of adrift. I think it hasn't quite found its lane yet. Especially considering it's kind of competing with CrossFit.com's programming now. And like, that's another thing that seems a little confusing to me, like why they would do that. And I think at the end of the day, there was I had a lot of ideas and a lot of hope and a lot of, I was reading into it the most positive way I could, which was he's going to make a ton of, I was very optimistic. He's going to make a lot of changes. They're going to hurt at first, but they're going to make CrossFit into like $1 billion brand that everyone is going to really be a big part of. Because I didn't mourn the loss of what CrossFit was. I know a lot of people did, and I know a lot of people are kind of hung up on that. But to be fair, like the thing that was CrossFit in 2014, it's gone. It's gone, and it's never coming back. The thing that was CrossFit in 2008 is gone. Right. And it's okay. It's okay that it's gone. It's okay that there were people like me who were like, oh, there's 3 affiliates within 100 miles of where I live. I guess I'll pick the closest one. Like, that's okay. And then you go and it's like, you're in a park, there's one kettlebell and like a band, and they're like, we're going to figure it out. It's going to be great. And it's like, this is awesome. I love this. And it's okay that now, the facilities are nicer and the coaches are more professional and the athletes are better than they've ever been. This is just part of the growth of the entire ecosystem. If it was the same as it was back then, it would be dead. There's no way it'd be able to be the thing it is and be as culturally important. And I think people lose sight of that, of like, Greg changed strength and conditioning and working out for the entire world. Mm-hmm. Like if you look on Instagram's, like fitness highlights or reels or whatever, anywhere, what do you see? Kettlebells, barbells. You see a guy in a gym doing like plyo push-ups and like clapping and stuff, but what's in that gym? There's a rig in the back, mm-hmm. and that rig has Rogue written on it, and there's barbells. And it's like, oh, it went from these weird guys in the corner of like a dusty gym doing squats to everybody is doing squats, to like, if you're not squatting, then you're unhealthy. Or if you're not moving some weight, then you're not really healthy. Or if you're not combining high intensity interval stuff with some gymnastics, with some like body weight stuff, with some weightlifting, then you're not really doing it right. And it's like, oh, where did that come from? That came from CrossFit. That came from Greg creating this thing and it being like the spark that lit, all the brush and created this like unstoppable fire that just like destroyed the fitness industry that was back then and completely like rejuvenated it into the thing it is now. So saying, oh man, I'm mourning the death of what CrossFit used to be, that kind of is doing CrossFit itself a disservice. Like the methodology is that viral. It's that like visceral that it's taken over the lives of so many people, and it's changed the way that like fitness is experienced across the world. And it's a beautiful thing that it's not the same as it was 15 years ago. It just hasn't necessarily lived up to its potential. And it just seems like it's not making the changes it needs to in order to make that next step, that next jump, to be even more ubiquitous and even more influential.
Well, I think that's a good place to jump off the CrossFit piece. And Donna Murphy actually sent in a question because, and I think this is something I kind of want to hit on. We never got to last time because we went long, but you know, Cliff, Kyle, Chase, and you did sand for years.
Yeah.
And Donna makes a good point. You barely talked CrossFit.
That's true. First of all,
is it ever coming back?
I mean, before I answer the question, Donna, I love you. Hello. If you guys don't know, Donna's Chase's mom. So Donna's the best. I love you very much. Thank you very much for sending Chase over when you did to Austin. It's been a big part of my life ever since. He's wonderful, and he did a great job with your son. To answer your question, it's really hard. I did the remote podcast thing for a while. After I moved to Austin, we did the Wadcast remote for a year and a half. And I really don't like remote podcasting to do that regularly. Like, hats off to you guys for being able to pull it off. Remote podcasting to me is a bigger challenge than almost any other part of doing the whole podcast deal. You know, and so much of what made Scale is Needed, like this, like beautiful, chaotic, like, I don't know, fart in the wind of like a podcast of like what it was all about, was just like the insane energy of being in Cliff and Kyle's like dirty living room, or like my patio, or what, like, you know, it just the fact that we were all sitting next to each other in the middle of all this insanity and having conversations about, you know, Denis Villeneuve's newest movie, or like, you know, they would always come back to like David Lynch's movies, or like, you know, what's going on in CrossFit. Like, the fact that we were able to do that in person, I think is really where the magic was. And
sure, it's more organic that way.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe, you know, maybe I never was able to make the remote podcasting thing work because I did very little pre-production. I'm a big, like, let's sit down, let's start recording, and then let's see where this conversation goes. So like doing pre-pro of like, okay, here's what we're going to talk about, and here's our run of show. Like, I never was into doing that. So yeah, maybe that's why remote podcasting never worked for me. But yeah, I think Scale is Needed is on a very long, potentially interminable hiatus.
And I want to bring up Chase a little bit because we've become friends with Chase. He's become a really good friend of the show. We actually just signed with him and C4.
Oh yeah, congratulations.
And so he talks about you like a father in Austin, that you were like his mentor, and you leaving really impacted him a lot. And I don't know if you heard the interview we did with him, but he does talk about you very much in high regard. And I just wanted to get your opinion on that as a follow-up.
You know, I did a lot of things wrong that I would like redo. I think the effective, you know, end result of my work in Austin when I was at Flow and when I was doing my own thing, I did a lot of things that I would do differently, knowing now a lot more about how the business works and a lot sort of like where we're going to go. The absolute number one best thing I ever did was hire Chase. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that is the best, like, to this point, probably personally and professionally, the number one decision I've made in that entire point of my life is like hiring Chase and having him be so excited and getting him out to Austin so that he and I can like riff off of each other and build a relationship. It was by far and away like the best possible thing I could have done. Chase is a really, really special dude. I mean, like, I think in, 5 to 10 years, the work that he's doing and like where he's going to be professionally is going to be astounding, for a lot of people. And thinking that I've been able to sort of help him in that, I'm not even going to say like guide him is like too strong of a word. Just being able to have been like a sounding board for him, being able to sort of give him a little bit of perspective sometimes and him give me some perspective sometimes, like being there, and seeing his development is really, really amazing. Like, I love that guy. He's the best.
Well, one thing I've learned is you definitely surrounded yourself with the smartest people. And if people don't know, Chase is like, he was academic All-American. He was like smartest of the smart, and Cliff and Kyle the same way.
Yeah.
You definitely surrounded yourself with the best of the best. So my last question to you from me is, what are your future goals there in California? Are you building a new network of people like that, or is that just never going to happen again?
I hope it happens again at some point. It really was lightning in a bottle in a lot of ways. Cliff, Kyle, Chase, that is a group of people I think are going to be impossible to replace. I think that entire sort of community that we built, the friends and the family that we had out there, are going to be difficult. And then professionally for myself, being involved in flow, the community of creators that were working there and the professionals that I was surrounded by. You guys got to see Cliff and Kyle and Chase, and those were the relationships that I like most strongly bonded in, through that time in flow. But there was a lot of really, really talented people at that company that I learned a lot from. And I think these days, I would probably be more inserting myself into an existing circle of professionals as opposed to trying to build one around myself. I mean, I one of the things that, we talked a little bit about how I don't do regret. I know that the decision I make at the time is the right decision based off of the information that I have. One of the decisions that I was very consciously making constantly throughout the time that I had my channel going was how I was going to monetize it. I am incredibly stubborn, and maybe it's like a weird pride, or maybe it's like a weird ego thing, but from a just a purely philosophical perspective, I never wanted to be beholden to advertising revenue. I never wanted to be beholden to, sponsorship. I never wanted those things because I felt like the message that I was trying to get across would be watered down by having those types of professional relationships. But on the flip side, I did a really terrible job of monetizing my work in any other way. So I was never really successful in trying to find where the other side of that is, right? If I'm not being paid by sponsors, or if I'm not being paid by, events or whatever, right? Someone needs to be funding all of this process, and, ad revenue through YouTube is not what, people try and convince you it is. It's not going to happen, right? And so I think looking back on the professional decisions that I made, that was very conscious and absolutely the wrong decision. Because, there's you get worn thin by the work you do, but if you have like a pile of cash to put that being worn thin on, you could get a buffer there.
Cry into a bag of money, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, it's like that meme. I'm like patting my eyes dry with $100 bills. That would make me feel a lot better.
It's okay.
So I think, looking back at how lucky I was to have like all of these really powerful, positive relationships professionally, and grow and develop professionally, and learn so much, not just from my successes and failures and mistakes, but also from watching their successes and their failures and their mistakes, and how they bounce back from them. That's just something that I don't even imagine how I could proactively recreate that. I just have to be able to be open to that occurring again and being in the right environment for that sort of thing to happen. And, I'll never replace Cliff, Kyle, and Chase. I mean, it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. But, maybe professionally I can find a couple people to take their spots. It's like Moneyball. I can Moneyball maybe each of those people in a little bit.
I know exactly how you feel. I wouldn't replace these ladies either. And after a couple of years, man, we're just like family. So
yeah.
I have no more questions. If the ladies have some, I'll turn it over to them. They're good.
I do.
Oh,
did you read the rule book this year?
I skimmed it. I was like
Okay.
so ready to be like, give me something new. And I skimmed through it and I was like, you didn't give me a lot of new stuff, guys. Come on.
It was the one time where I really missed you being around, because I always looked forward to you sort of whittling away at, the details and getting to the hard truths of the rule book. So I was like, darn it, like I got to read this now. Read the whole thing.
Yeah. The desire to like deep dive into those types of details definitely was one of the first things to go.
I bet. If you were still in the space, is there an athlete that you've not talked to before that you are like, that you would be itching to talk to?
Probably
Anybody
Mal
intriguing?
O'Brien. Yeah, probably Mal.
Do you think you'd actually get access to talk to her? Because
I have a pretty decent relationship with Matt, and I think I'd be able to leverage that. Okay. There's some athletes that I've been able to keep well in touch with. Not like there's nobody who's like competing at a high level that I'm talking to like on a weekly basis, but there are people who I know that, I can text them or I can call them and they'll pick up. And and they know the same thing, that like I'll get text messages and I'll get calls from some of these athletes who have questions about various whatevers. And they know that I'm still picking up those calls. And, I think, I don't know if I'd be able to, pull off getting access to Mal, but she's really interesting in a lot of ways. And I think I have a lot of curiosity as to how she's going to do in her career moving forward.
Have you pulled up the game's website lately?
I haven't. Should I?
No, I just was curious to know, like, if you looked at the leaderboard or did you look at a workout? You didn't do the Open, did you? Or did you?
I did not do the Open. I had a rib injury like the week of the Open. So I just didn't put myself in a position to be able to even do it scaled. Could you guys hold on 1 second? I'm so sorry.
Sure. Yeah. We've gone past the hour.
Lev's up.
Right.
So Jason writes in, thank you for blazing a trail for wannabes like me, Armen. I legit would have tried. I wouldn't have tried writing about CrossFit if dudes like you didn't try to shake the CrossFit tree as hard as possible.
Very cool.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, our Katie had a question. I need to answer that. I was muted, right? You guys didn't hear what I had to say.
No, we didn't hear what you had to say.
I said, I was just answering a random whatever question for the house, and I was like, did I just tell everybody what that question? Anyway,
we're on live, and we all know.
Yeah, it's like now everybody knows like what the code to the house is. Right? Like it's like, what's the security code for this thing? Thank you for blazing a trail. I appreciate that. I think one of the things that I was very well aware of was the helping hand that I got from a lot of people in just content creation. And every opportunity I had, I tried to make it really clear, like, hey guys, there's nothing to this but trying it. Like, if you're interested in creating content in any space, the only best way to figure it out is to do it. You can't like pine over it. You can't. And so I always encouraged people to try and make content the best they can and enjoy whatever they could out of it. sometimes people really took to it. Most of the time they didn't quite understand how much work it was going to be to begin with. But there's really a beauty to being able to like pick up a camera or, sit down and write an article or write a blog post. And I think that's a really good place to start for a lot of people. Like if they're looking to, scratch some sort of like a content creation itch, it's like volunteer to write a blog post on your affiliates page once a week or once every other week or whatever your time allows you to do, and see what people think. Like that's a good place to start. It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I have to compete against CrossFit's production value, or I have to compete against, the Buttery Bros, traveling around the world and their access to these athletes, or, Brian's like, encyclopedic knowledge of all these like esoteric rules and events over the past 15 years. You don't have to do that. If you have something to say and it's interesting and it's topical, I think you'd be surprised. There are a lot of people who want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking with us. I've loved, as always, talking with you. And seriously, hit me up if you want to talk about kids sometime. I'll talk about kids anytime you want to.
All day, every day. I
All
mean,
day,
we're constantly talking about our son. I mean, like, we talk about, what do you think his voice is going to sound like when he starts saying his words? Oh my God, can you remember how tiny he was back and look at this picture of him? It's like, we're constantly, even when he's right there, we're still talking about him. So like talking about him and talking about kids in general is 90% of our conversations these days. It really took over.
And for our listeners who don't know, Amy is a co-director of a very well-renowned preschool here in Columbus, where they teach through play.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yes, I 100% need to sit down and talk to you, because we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with him as he's growing older, and how we want him to sort of experience, like, schooling or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a whole different world. Trying to answer that question with preschools, and what type of environment should he be in, and what should he try and learn, and what's the angle that it should be taught in. And
I got you.
Yeah. I need your email or your phone number or something.
Okay.
So
Scott will send it to you. To you.
Please.
Okay.
Please.
Well, thank you so much, Armen, for joining us and taking some time out. We know you're busy with the little one now, and I hope Lev is doing great, and Katie too. And I'm sure she's going to enjoy that night away at the hotel in a week.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Scott, Kat, Amy, really appreciate you guys talking to me and giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys. I really do love engaging with the community and being a part of it in just the little ways that I can these days. So thank you so much,
anytime.
guys.
Yeah, for sure.
See ya.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.